Hey, how you doing? Keith Stephenson here on our Syllable Space podcast, where we celebrate the inspiring work of languages from around the world. Today, we are joined by Rueben Constantine. Rueben is an influencer, a language influencer, and makes videos. I mean, you probably know him better than I do. But look, I'm so excited to have him on the podcast today to be able to kind of touch base with him and just kind of explore some ideas and topics in terms of how he got there and where he wants to go. So, Ruben, how are you today?
I'm so good. Thank you, Keith, and thank you for the introduction. That's really, really kind of you. I think the pleasure is all mine. However, it's really a privilege to be here. And yeah, it's great that we share this common love for languages, common love for the stories of people and their languages. And I can't wait to discuss this with you.
Yeah, man. So we see you all over the internet. But I mean, what I want to know is like, who is Ruben Constantine? I mean, we hear the British accent, we see all the great videos, but what do you want the world to know about you?
Boy, that's a very good question. So first of all, maybe this is disappointing to some people, but I am not the person that you see on my Instagram profile, or at least that is only one facet of me. I think we're all a very multifaceted people, and I know for a lot of my friends and people who know me in real life, they actually cannot watch my videos. They find it unbelievably cringy or weird because I'm very much a different person in real life to how I kind of, even how I talk in those videos. It is somewhat my television voice, which I guess I'm doing right now as well. But I suppose what the one aspect of me that kind of shines in those videos is my love for languages and my slightly geeky side. My very that is definitely true to my personality. To answer your question, my name is Ruben, and I am a bit of a nerd. In school, I was always the kind of slightly weird kid. Didn't necessarily fit in all the time, but I loved school. I loved learning. I loved subjects. And at one point, I guess I found a niche that I particularly loved, which was languages. Um, so yeah, I guess that's the way I would introduce myself.
That's cool. That's cool. Your Instagram posts are at Reubenlingo. They are so engaging and informative. And how do you decide which topics or language tips to share with your audience?
Oh, first of all, that's so kind. Thank you for the compliment. And I actually really like this question. Because some people think, how do you find these topics? How do you come up with them? Is that a lot of work, etc.? But actually, it started as a creative outlet. Essentially, I used to love reading books about languages and linguistics and watching YouTube videos. And whenever I would learn these facts, I would then bore my friends and family to death because I would just be telling them all about this stuff that I find so interesting. And I guess the Instagram page started as a place for me to dump all this information rather than boring my friends and family with it. I can put it out there, and I'm beyond delighted with the fact that there are people who actually also find it interesting, um, and my audience is steadily growing, which I still can't believe to this day. But it started as just a place to dump a kind of brain dump.
You know what's crazy is and you're kind of expressing yourself. You're this like humble guy that like who the heck would be interested in what I'm doing. But you create this IG channel, you create these videos almost for fun to some degree, just as a brain dump. And the next thing you know, they're like catching on, and now you're like, I'm going to say it. You're far too humble to say it, but I'm going to say, you're turning into this like internet sensation based on foreign languages. And you can't believe it because in your mind, you're just Ruben, dude. I'm just Ruben. You know what I mean?
Oh, thank you. That's really, really kind. I've not necessarily thought about it that way before. And I mean, this is all the crazy thing about the internet in general is that things happen so quickly.
Yep.
So quickly. It's really been only the last 6 months that I've started making content regularly, and I'm astounded at the rate that it's blown up. So yeah, I've not really had a chance to step back and think of it like that, but that's incredibly kind of you. Really, thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So many of your posts break down language learning concepts in a fun and accessible way. Like, do you have a magic formula that you use to strike a balance between educating and like entertaining your followers?
That is a really good question. Yeah, I'm very much aware when I make a post. I kind of have two types of post really. One of them is what I'll call a clickbait post, which has something very eye-catching, something very maybe cliche, maybe well-known, something that has a bit more mass appeal. And I will especially try and exaggerate that in the first few seconds of the video to catch viewers' interest. But then I try balance that with, I have a number of posts which, like recently I made a post about Guadeloupe Creole, which I'm aware was a much longer video, and they obviously tend to not do as well. I'm aware that it was a little bit more in depth, and it got fewer views as a result. But I don't mind this. I'm completely prepared for this, and I think yeah, it's striking a balance for me between the posts that appeal to new followers and get sort of mass appeal, and posts that are actually more interesting for me to make, which are the slightly more in-depth linguistic sort of topics. Again, I try and avoid too much linguistics, jargon, or kind of citing papers or things like that. I try and keep things very, very accessible, even in the slightly more complex and inverted commas posts. But everything I post, I find interesting. Ultimately, that's how I find the balance. I hope if it interests me, it'll interest the
Yeah,
audience.
well, it sounds like you have a winning formula. So you often receive a lot of interaction from your audience. Like, what types of posts or content tend to resonate the most with your followers?
Really good question. I think the ones that tend to resonate the most are when I talk about languages that are not necessarily English. I talk about other people's languages, if you like.
Yeah.
And so one of my biggest videos was talking about the differences between Brazilian and European Portuguese, and why European Portuguese phonologically resembles Russian. And this was so interesting because loads of people, speakers of Portuguese, had kind of noticed this phenomena, and to then see someone, a foreign person who is not or not a Portuguese native speaker, explaining this phenomena appealed to them, and it even got played on a Portuguese sort of national TV channel actually. And so yeah, I think another big one was a video I made talking about the Catalan language, talking about the Romanian language. So people like, and I find it fascinating as well when I point out interesting things about languages, and people feel, wow, this guy is allowing other people to discover our language. That's pretty cool. And I don't know, that gives me a great feeling as well. If I can, I'm a big fan of what I'll call linguistic diversity. I think languages are in themselves a richness that deserves to be kind of preserved in a world that is becoming sort of more and more homogenized in a number of ways. And I do take great pleasure in the idea that maybe a part of me is contributing to sparking an interest in other people's languages and other people's culture. That feels good.
Absolutely. I mean, language is the foundation of every culture. It just is. So the fact that you're able to, touch all of these different languages and kind of plug into folks' cultures, it really is beneficial for people just to get to know each other from around the world. So it's critically important. I mean, have any of your posts sparked unexpected conversations or connections with people from different language communities?
That's a really, really good question. Yeah, I was surprised just how many. I made a video recently talking about German, and the way that the German language only recently became sort of standardized, and in a lot of parts of Germany there are different what are called dialect, which are spoken. I'm not a big fan of that term dialect, but whatever. But what was really interesting was in the comments, other people said, "Hey, this situation is actually really similar to the situation in my country," and I didn't realize that this situation, rather than being maybe the exception, is almost the norm. But I think a lot of people weren't necessarily aware of that. That standardized languages are really quite a new invention, and actually in every country there are a number of, let's say, minority languages, which I think deserve more and more attention. And so drawing attention to these in the context of German has allowed other people to say, hey, I also speak a regional language in my country. That sparked a discussion between them, which I think was really cool.
What languages do you speak?
Pues hablo el español, parlo català, I speak English. Me la cavo abbastanza bene in italiano, je parle français, mi lata ellenika, vorbesc-Române, говорю немного по-русски, ich spreche Deutsch, also ein bisschen, falo português, mas fico com uma mistura na cabeça, não sei se quero falar o português europeu ou o português brasileiro. Isso. I forget which ones I haven't said now. I think that's about all of them. So Spanish, je parle français. Je suis dans un pays francophone actuellement, en fait. So French, Spanish, Greek, Italian, Portuguese, Russian, German, Catalan, Romanian, English. Oh, and I'm learning Guadeloupe Creole at the moment as well, which is such a language. Such a cool language.
What was the most challenging language you've learned, and what strategies did you use to overcome those challenges?
Oh, that's a great question. I think different languages have different challenges for different reasons, but to be honest, the most challenging I've learned is Russian. I think the problem, not really the problem, no language is difficult per se, it's just a question of difference from your native language, and Russian is by far the most different from English. Greek would probably be second, but Greek, by means of the massive Greek influence on vocabulary of other European languages, it was easier to tackle, whereas Russian, I felt like I had very little vocabulary to start with. So my method is always, as quick as I can, get to a point where I can listen to and engage with content that is interesting and ideally that is made for native speakers, and then just literally sort of acclimatize to the sounds of the language, to the way the language is spoken, to the way people phrase things, and eventually when I speak, then I just repeat what I've heard. And this was difficult with Russian because in the beginning I tried listening to podcasts, I tried watching YouTube videos, and there was very, very little that I understood. Whereas if I remember when I started already with Catalan, I could understand a solid 50% because it resembles Spanish, French, Italian.
Yeah.
Whereas Russian, I simply didn't have this. Combine that with verbal aspect, combine that with the verbs of motion, which are so complicated. There is no way. Don't ask a Russian person how to translate the verb to go. It's extremely complex. It depends on so many factors. And so that was like difficult. But I just remember once you start to understand things and things start to click and you feel the cogs turning in your brain, it's the most satisfying feeling. The amount of, I don't know, dopamine released when you hear a Russian sentence, and I'm able to identify all the words, and I'm able to identify why this word has this grammatical ending, and why I don't know, why X preposition was used, or why this is the genitive, it's because it's negative, blah blah. Like that was amazing. And so I think honestly, just patience is the key. It's a matter of time. It's a matter of acclimatizing to the language, and start with simpler and slower materials, but ideally still spoken materials, audiovisual materials. Fortunately, with Russian, there are loads of resources online, so that is but yeah.
So if you could just close your eyes, snap your finger, and be completely fluent in a new language, what would that language be and why?
That's an amazing question. First of all, I don't know if I would do it because part of the journey for me is the most exciting part, not necessarily the fluency. But
Yes.
if I was given that opportunity, it's between Mandarin Chinese and Arabic. I hesitate with Arabic because Arabic, you've got to choose a little bit more carefully. Am I choosing modern standard Arabic? Am I choosing Egyptian Arabic? I might choose Egyptian Arabic because my grandma grew up in Egypt and it's a place that I've never been to, but I would love to discover that part of the world. But I think based on the pure number of speakers and the amount of opportunities for cultural enrichment, just to live new experiences that it would open to me, I think I would choose Mandarin Chinese. I also love the way it sounds, and I think if I get a free writing system thrown in, like I'm not just fluent speaking, but also fluent reading and writing, then I would definitely choose Mandarin Chinese because that would be, well, I say would be, it will be when I dedicate some time to learning it in the future. It will require a lot of time to acquire, especially the writing system. But yeah, amazing language. I love it.
So, little known secret. I have 3 sons, and 2 of them are fluent in Mandarin. One is 20 years old, and one is 15 years old. We turned 16 this week, and they went to a Chinese immersion school or Mandarin immersion school here in the U.S. They both spent time in China and Taiwan. Yeah, we're like so blessed that they mastered it. I mean, they've been going to school since they were 3 or 4 years old, and they've mastered the language. The school is Yu Ying Public Charter School in Washington, D.C. Just giving a cheap plug for the school, but they've done amazing work in Washington, D.C., where they have. I mean, most of their students are fluent and go on to major in colleges and universities across the country. So, little known secret. You didn't know that, but yeah.
So smart. If I ever have kids in the future, I'm gonna do the exact same.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
To them. I mean,
so what's next for like Reubenlingo? Do you have any exciting projects or like languages on the horizon?
Good question. So I've got 1 year left of studies of university. That will I mean I'm so looking forward to it. I love studying. I love my uni. I love the opportunities that's given me, but it will slow down my sort of proficiency at producing content for a little while, and also my proficiency at learning other languages. So I study actually like officially for my degree just 2 languages, which are French and Greek, le français que est hellénica, and so I'm gonna have to stop learning other languages for a little while and focus on those. Oh no, poor me. But that will be exciting and interesting as well. And then basically come July next year, so talking 14 months from now, I will kind of be a free agent. And I was really worried and not sure what I want to do for a career. But having been inspired by a couple of my friends who are full-time influencers, my dream is to really focus from then on and from now on in the meantime on growing my channel as much as possible in whatever way I can, and it's not very pleasant to necessarily talk about money, but ultimately monetizing it and making it something that I could live off would be my absolute dream. So yeah.
Well, you know what they say? They say if you can find a job that you love, that you never work a day in your life. So if you can like, kind of monetize, your passion and your love, man, you'll have an exciting life.
I hope so.
Yeah, well, I really enjoyed getting to know more about just kind of Rueben and Reubenlingo and kind of your stance and position on languages. Truly interesting and inspiring to most people who hear this. Do you have any parting message you'd like to share with the audience as we conclude this interview?
Yeah. First of all, a massive thank you to you, and a massive respect for what you're doing at Syllable Space. I think it's such a great project. I've had the chance already to meet some of the tutors, and I think you've really done well in your selection. Every one of them is very, very passionate about teaching. I think the great thing about languages, and something that I've not touched on yet in this episode, is of course each language permits you to meet new people. Very simply, it is a method of communication as well as an interesting instrument, and I think establishing relationships in another language is just the most amazing thing. It may seem a little bit artificial to some people to do that with a tutor, but I think absolutely not. You still are speaking to a person. You're still learning about them. You're learning about their reality through that language, and I think that is a huge motivation to keep going to learn the language, and simply put, a huge source of pleasure. I think it's one of the coolest things that we can do in life. And I mean, well, why not use the internet, the sort of convenience of being able to do that from home as well, with online lessons. I think is particularly interesting. So yeah, massive respect. And yeah, just thank you for this interview. It feels very you've really allowed me to indulge myself with some of these answers, but they've been great questions. So thank you very much.
No, I appreciate you carving out some time out of your busy schedule to connect today. Please, for anyone who wants to follow Rueben, please look on his page at Reubenlingo, his IG page, and join his tribe of folks who are kind of regularly engaging in the exploration of foreign languages, or global languages, as I'd like to call them. And please reach out to him. He'll respond, send him messages, whatever. He'll respond to you. He wants to be your partner in this thing. So Keith Stephenson from Syllable Space, thank you for your time today. We're signing off. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Yep.